Let's go ahead and open up with prayer. Father our God, we are grateful and thankful for the day that you have made. Thankful for your goodness, your kindness toward us, for always our faults and our needs. Father, you know everything that's going on with each of us in our lives, Lord, our ups and downs and struggles that we face, things that worry us, things that keep us up at night, things that we share with anybody but ourselves. But Father God, we give it all over to you, trusting in your power and your ability to handle whatever comes our way. We lift up to you our children, our grandchildren, our parents, our siblings, our spouses, our loved ones, family members, and our friends. We lift up our church, Father God, asking you, draw us closer, make us stronger, help us to be what you would have for us to be. In Jesus' name we pray. And all right. so so we will get through most of the pictures. Still not all of them, but um the important stuff will to get through. Are those my hands? Those are not my hands. My hands look a lot better than that. so I I try my best to I try my best to uh pictures that look like us when I can. And so sometimes he definitely been taking his sugar on that thumb. Absolutely. Uh so I'm limited in what I can do. I've often thought of kind of doing that, just taking pictures. 'Cause there's a market for it. People pay for pictures, um, clip art, things like this. And because there aren't a lot of minority images, um, it could be lucrative for the right images. But no, those are not my hands. I do not know whose hands those belong to. Uh, but no, 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 no. Those of y'all watching online, you gotta understand what I'm going through back here. Normally it's Dee Dee acting up, but it's Sister Barksdale acting up today. Right, yeah. All right. So again, this is just a map of Israel. And just for reference, Israel is about the size of Massachusetts or New Jersey. Whole nation is about that size. So you can drive from north all the way to south in about 6 hours. It's not a very large country. Um, Down here is Judea. Here is Samaria. This is Galilee, which is where Jesus lived. This area is another area that's mentioned, the Decapolis. That means the 10 cities. That's so those are Perea is not really mentioned um, much, especially in the New Testament, by name of area. We hear about Judea, we hear about Samaria, we hear about Galilee, we hear about the Decapolis, but these other areas they don't really mention by name. Um, these are some of the important cities around in this time. Just a closer look at the north places. We'll talk about Caesarea Philippi today. Um, we'll talk about Mount Carmel today. Um, Talk about the Jordan River. This is the Jordan River starts here and it goes down the Sea of Galilee, comes out, and then it ends. down at the Dead Sea where we talked about last week. Talk about um, Citropolis or Bet Shean today, and um, maybe one or two other places. Oh, and Caesarea Maritima. So there's two Caesareas. There's Caesarea Maritima, and then there's the more popular Caesarea Philippi. Um, Most of us are more familiar with Caesarea Philippi, but there's actually quite a bit that happens in Caesarea Maritima. Normally, it's just called Caesarea or Caesarea. So, Caesar named, or actually, Herod named Caesarea in honor of Caesar. They would do that, just a little brown nosing, as we would call it. They would name an area of them after Caesar or somebody important in order to kind of get a little favor. And so, not to be outdone, Caesarea Philippi was named after Caesar and Philip. So you end up with these places that established around the same time, but because at times they were kind of in different areas under different rulers, they have similar names. Just like we have, um, go in some states into some of the same names, and cities are named after the same people. You got Washington D.C. named after Washington, but also Washington State is named after Washington, and things like. So they did that to honor him. Caesarea Philippi, Caesarea Maritima, or maritime, and that word maritime just means that it's on the sea. Um, it was one of Herod the Great's most impressive building accomplishments. Herod the Great, um, there was no real city there. He built that city there, and he uh, he built it as an artificial harbor. It was the first man-made harbor in the ancient world. The very first man-made harbor. The reason he created this harbor here is so that his area, the area that he was in charge of, would be able to trade the next uh, port. The closest port is in Haifa, which is where Mount Carmel is, and we'll go to Mount Carmel next. Um, we stayed in Haifa our first night. Stayed on Mount Carmel. That's where the Baha'i temple was that we showed last week. That very modern Mediterranean city. It's right on the Mediterranean Sea. It had a mixed population, but it was a Gentile city. It was not though it was in a Jewish area, it was in a Gentile city. Herod was mixed, um, and so he favored the Romans. And so when he created the city, he did not create it to be a Jewish city. So there were all the things that a traditional Roman city would have, and um, Judea became a province, Roman province, ruled by a governor, and the capital was located at Caesarea. So he created the city and moved his capital there. So his this is where his winter palace was. We'll look at his summer palace uh, as we get closer to. They have winter and summer um, the same way Florida has winter and summer. Florida does get. I mean, when I lived in Florida, in Tampa or just outside of Tampa, it snowed at least, you know maybe 3 times. nothing stuck to the ground. There's a couple flakes in the air, but that's really it. It is a very uh, it's a tropical climate, so it doesn't get really, really, really hot, and it doesn't typically get really, really cold either. It can get cold. They have gotten snow. Um, it was snow that they said that broke off the nose on Golgotha. I don't know if I said that last week. Yeah, yeah. So the nose broke off, but they said it was snow, some ice that had got in there that broke the nose off. So, pardon me. What did she say? I know she was cutting up, cause she did he sneeze? Probably. um. So he made this his capital, and Herod would go down to Jerusalem for the feasts. Otherwise, he was chilling on the Mediterranean, um, out here. And at the very end, I do have a little video that kind of shows what the city would have actually looked like in his time when he created it. So he creates the city for him. There are a couple things that happen in Caesarea. Cornelius, uh, Peter had, just not to read all this. Peter is, well, Cornelius, first of all, is there. He's a godly man, and he lives in Caesarea, and the Jewish people in Caesarea um, needed to hear the word. They needed to hear about Jesus Christ. And so uh, God comes to Cornelius, and Cornelius sends for Peter. And many of us are familiar with Peter has this vision, and where the food comes down, all these these unclean foods, these foods that they have been commanded not to eat. They come down out of heaven, and he had after he has this vision, which lets him know, that you can't call unclean what God has called clean. That it's okay to eat, whatever, as long as we eat it with thanksgiving. He has this. The men who Cornelius has sent to him um, show up at his door, and so he goes and he preaches in Caesarea. Philip lived in Caesarea. Philip was one of the first deacons of the church who became an evangelist. He preached all the time till he came to Caesarea, and he stayed in Caesarea. In Acts 21 and 8, this is where Paul and Luke come to Caesarea, and when they come to Caesarea, they stay with Philip in his home. Philip had the daughters who were prophets. He had 7 daughters who were virgins who prophesied. They were prophetesses. Um, and then in Acts 23, Paul ends up in Caesarea again. This is when he is getting ready to be executed. They want to kill him. They arrest him. He says, "Y'all can't kill me. I'm a Roman citizen." And so they take him into protective custody. And they're supposed to bring him back the next day, but they get tipped off that there's 40 men gonna ambush him and kill him the next morning. So they take him out at night, and they take him to Caesarea where Herod is, so that he can stand before Herod, and he stays in Herod's palace that night before he ends up going off to Rome. So those things happen in Caesarea. It's a Roman theater. That's still there. Down in that corner is kind of like a mock up of what it would actually look like. But we'll take a look at it at the end, because there's a couple places that are kind of, they show realistically what they would have looked like together. But this huge theater, and it was open at the top, but uh, you would fit thousands of people, and they would come and they would watch shows, they would watch plays, they would um, they would be addressed by Caesar if he was doing if he came to town, they would come to hear him. Herod would address the people there. This beautiful um, Roman theater, it's still there. All the rows are still there. A lot of the ornaments and those things are not are gone. They've crumbled over the 2,000 years that it's been around, but you can still see most of it there. This is inside of a Roman bathhouse. So what we're looking at here, this would be the entryway, and these little pillars here would hold up the floor plates. So just imagine a big concrete tile, and maybe they would balance, like four would be on this. The corners of four would be on this, and then the corners of four would be on that. And they would pump in hot water underneath there, and it would be a steam bath. So there would be holes in the floor, and they would pump in that hot water, and they would take a steam bath through there. They remember they didn't have indoor plumbing. They pumping in hot water. This was an amazing feat, because also this is the aqueduct. This aqueduct was 13 miles long. It came from all the way from Mount Carmel, from Haifa, and it was 13 miles, and that's what brought fresh water to Caesarea. It would come. I mean, that's like like an above ground sewer. But once it got there, well, it was gonna be hot just from being outside in the sun. It was, but once it got there, they would boil it. They would just heat it up, and they would make it hot enough to get steam. It wouldn't be steaming hot from there, but it would be, you couldn't get cold water there. It would be very difficult for you to get cold water there, um, because it's going in the sun, you know, 13 miles from this mountain down. Gravity is pulling it down to right on the Mediterranean Sea, where it's salty water. So they could not drink that water. They had to get water brought in. There was no natural spring there. It wasn't even really much of a city there. Again, Herod created this place for him. This is the Pilot Stone. We I might have mentioned it in Sunday school or some other time. But there wasn't a lot of, there really isn't very much at all um, record of Pontius Pilate. Pontius Pilate was the prefect of Jerusalem. There wasn't a lot of outside record of him, and so there were some people who were claiming that he did not exist, that he was made up, that this is just, they just made up this name. They said the same thing about David, until they found some stones that had his name engraved in it. But this is a stone that has Pontius Pilate's name engraved in it. And it was a building that basically he had paid for and dedicated to Augustus Tiberius, who was a Caesar as well. And so this is not the actual stone; it's a replica of it, but the words are kind of inscribed on there. You can see on there, if you how to read Greek, that it says it's the end of his second name. So like Tius Pilate, the end of prefect of Judea, and has dedicated. And um, so that's just extra biblical proof that kind of supports the Bible narrative. that supports, helps us to know when people say, how do we know the Bible is real? Well, there are some historical artifacts that we can point to substantiate what it is, what that the Bible said. Some y'all said he didn't exist. Boom, here it is. He exists. They have also in 2018. This was found in 1961, but in 2018 they found a ring, his a signet ring with his name in it. That's right. Well, certain things they last a long time, especially depending on how they were disposed of, or kind of what happened to it. Um, this area is very prone to earthquakes, prone to volcanic eruptions, and so sometimes those things that destroy actually preserve because it let it get covered in dirt and people just left instead of taking it with them. And they left it all behind, and then so people come behind and now they dig it up and it's still there. Pottery, nails, things that didn't completely return back to the earth that would take, so long to actually to break down, especially being covered in dirt. They're protected from water and things that would cause them to be eroded. The real rock is in a museum. Yes. Yeah. Well, there are certain people who find things and and take and take them. Um, the same, why are you looking at me like that? So what happened? First thing that happens is she gonna sell them. The first thing that happens is that scavengers steal them. So we talked about the temple being destroyed, but the temple was destroyed because when all the gold melted, the scavengers came in to get the gold. The first people who, when we talk about the pyramids, first people who were grave robbers. They were the ones that did that. I mean, you got grave robbers. You got grave robbers now. People was slide stuff out at a funeral. Don't put nothing good in that in that box. Don't bury me with nothing. No, yeah, some costume or there. Put whatever. But so that's the first thing. It was that. But archaeologists, people who do this for a living, people who love the science, who love anthropologists, those people, they want to save it, they want to preserve it, they want to keep it for it to be shown. When I was talking about certain people who take things, I was talking about how you not robbers, how how they stole all those African artifacts and they're in museums in England and right, they're in museums in England instead of they want their stuff back. Absolutely, they do, and they should. But even we talked about it last week that the Church of Nativity, they took the the painting, they carved it out of the wall and took it to another church in Italy, and when it was already in a church. So people they do that, and so that it could be there and nobody bother it, nobody steal it. They made an impression of it and left one out that the elements can that people can go up, look at, touch, put their hands on, see, and feel. So the real one is in a museum. Okay. Next is Mount Carmel, and the city of Haifa is on Mount Carmel. It's next to a natural um, harbor. So Caesarea Maritima is down here, but then the closest natural harbor is up here. So there isn't one all the way down here. There is now one in Joppa, and then there's now one in a place called Ashdod, which is further south. But those are man-made harbors. What happened on Mount Carmel? That's where Elijah and Ahab had their showdown. And I do have all these verses here, but I'm not going to read all these verses. Um, so what happened to make the long story short? Ahab has his people worshiping Baal. Elijah's representing God. And Elijah said, if God is God, follow him. If Baal is God, you follow him. He says, we're going to have a showdown today. We're going to build an altar here. I'm going to build one to God. You're going to build one to Baal. And the first one that answers by fire, that's the true God. So he says, y'all go first. The prophets of Baal, they build their altar and they call on Baal and nothing happens. They hollering, they're cutting themselves, they're doing all this, nothing happens. Nothing happens, nothing happens. All day long, nothing happens. Elijah makes fun of them. Oh, is Baal in the bathroom? Oh, did he go on a trip? Maybe y'all got to call him a little bit louder. Nothing happens. Elijah says, okay, my turn. Elijah builds an altar. Elijah says, bring me some water. They pick big old barrel of water, dump water on the altar. This altar got to catch on fire. You don't wet no nothing you want to catch on fire. Bring me another barrel of water. Dumps another barrel of water. Bring me one more barrel of water. So much water that there's a trough around the altar, that the trough of the altar is now full of water. He calls on God. God comes down with fire, consumes the sacrifice, and evaporates all the water in the trough around there. Then Elijah kills all 450 prophets of Baal. So on Mount Carmel, and so you've got, this is Mount Carmel. This is kind of from looking up at it from the sea. There's a road down here that travels along the sea. And then on there's this monastery for Elijah. And then there's this statue of Elijah on Mount Carmel. Got the knife in his hand. Got his foot on one of those prophets of Baal that he's getting ready to kill. This again is the Sea of Galilee. This is a replica of a boat that would have been from Jesus's time. This is an actual boat from Jesus's time. What's left of it? Absolutely. So they date it from somewhere between 120 BC and 40 AD, so that would cover the time of Jesus's life. So it's somewhere around that time. They used the wood of 12 different trees in order to make this boat. What happened was during a drought, the lakes get smaller, and two fishermen saw this outline in the mud, which where water used to be is now muddy, and they dug it out and they realized that it was a boat, and so they put it together. There, do I have? I don't. There's it wasn't very clear, but there's really like a map of every single piece of wood and what it was made out of. I just didn't have a good picture. It's on this little banner right here. You just couldn't see it, so I didn't put it in. But every single piece of wood that came together to make this boat, and then like this is all glass, and like blue light under. Um, yeah, like water. It's supposed to look like water. It's a boat that would have been able to carry about 15 people. So it was still a smaller boat, but a good sized boat. This would have been a boat that they would take a quick trip across from, or maybe two people fishing. This wouldn't have been a boat big enough for Jesus to sleep in, but it might have been a boat similar to what when Simon, when he called Peter and told him to launch out into the let down his. That could have been that size of a boat for one or two people to fish on together. It's big enough to fit 15 people and nothing else. You're not carrying a bunch 15 people and your fish. So it would have been. I mean, when I say it's not big enough for Jesus to sleep in, it's 12 of them and somebody sleeping. So you know, somebody sleeping takes up more space than somebody who's sitting up, right? You know. The Jordan River, and this is the Yardenit baptismal site of the Jordan River. Um, this is pictures of part of the Jordan. It wasn't like that. That's kind of rapids flowing. Uh, well, it's not that deep right there, but so this is a baptismal site. That's me baptizing. That's Carmen, and that's my cousin Michelle. So you come in, and my sister's also in the picture, but it's kind of cut off. Um, you come in, and they have this little place. So the people were sitting down there. This picture we took on the way in, coming in. People sit down there, and you kind of go down these. They have these ramps that lead down, so you're not. It's all finished and nice. There's a changing room, showers, and all of that. So you go down, and usually it's very busy. We were the only people there, because there's actually this is like the biggest pavilion that they have, but there's like three or four different lines that they'll have. So if they have a big group, one group will set up here, and then there'll be another group just a little bit further down, another group a little further down, where um, they can line up. The people line up in the little along the ramp. They baptize one, and then they go out, and then the next one comes down. And but we were the only ones there at this time. My guy said we first thing in the morning, and so we were blessed to be. Yeah, we're standing. We're standing. I mean, it. You see, the river goes much further back, so we're like kind of right here. So I mean, I'm really no more than the person who taking this picture is not in the water. They're standing right outside the water, so it's not that deep, especially right there. It does get deeper, um, but right there, it's not that deep, and that's the color of the water. Pardon me. I did not get baptized this time. I did the baptizing. The first time I went, I got baptized. Absolutely. I wasn't going all that way and not get baptized. Let me get me in this water. This time the water was nice and warm. I told you the first time it was real cold. I went in January the first time I went. So it was cold. Water was nice and warm. At least decent temperature. Um so they really don't have any people around. I took them backwards, yes. Well, some people Some people baptize with some people just going down like this and going down under the water, straight down. But no, we don't. No, I don't know anybody who baptizes forward. Baptized backwards. I've I've baptized by myself forever, forever. I mean, I've baptized men this tall, people this wide. I've done it by my in the pool by myself. The um, I'm sure everybody at one time. I'm sure Star Bethlehem at one time did the river down there. You know, I mean, the church is 122 years old, so, so before there was indoor plumbing, I'm sure they did what they had to do, and they only did it in the summertime. You saved up the baptisms till it wasn't as nasty, and we didn't know what nasty was. You just got in, you got in the water, and then you got out, right? Uh, People, the what really the heavier you are, the more the water will lift you up. Yeah, they didn't need they definitely didn't need two for you. I mean, we do two, and um, here at Star Bethlehem we do two. At my first church we did two, but the church that I grew up in, one person baptizing. That's it. I mean, my father did it by himself until the Reverend Stanfield came. Reverend Stanfield did all the baptizing. Once my father stopped, uh, I mean, my father is here. My father is standing out on his. He's standing up top saying the words while I baptize. Um, but my brother, he did all the baptizing. When my brother got his church, I did all the baptizing. I left. Uh, Now one other minister, he been doing all the baptizing for the last 13 years or 14 years, however long I've been gone. He does all the baptizing by himself, and he's smaller than me. No, but what? So, and I understand, and I've done it enough to where, but that's what I'm talking to them, coming in, helping them feel relaxed, and then explaining what I'm gonna do and how it's gonna happen, and then we take them in and bring them back up. All right. You need to go back in. This is Tell Dan. In the old, uh, before Israel conquered it, it was called Laish. Um, uh, 1 Kings 12:25 through 29. Um, so David was king. David died. Solomon became king. And when Solomon died, Rehoboam became king, his son. And under Rehoboam, the nation split. Rehoboam told them, if you thought my daddy was mean, you ain't seen nothing yet. And they said, the heck with you. So they picked Jeroboam to be their king. Jeroboam king in the north, Rehoboam king in the south. 10 tribes to the north, 2 tribes in the south. Jeroboam says, if they got to keep going to Jerusalem to offer sacrifices, they going to leave me. So he says, I'm going to build 2 temples up here in the north. He builds one at Bethel, he builds the other one at Dan. And instead of making temples to God, he puts 2 golden calves in there, and he tells them uh, that here are the gods who brought you out of Egypt, talking about there. He set one up in Bethel, and he set the other one up in Dan. So this is Van, and this is the ruins of the temple that he built. This is a judgment seat. We hear oftentimes in the Old Testament, the men of the city would sit at the gate of the city. They would discuss business, they would pronounce judgments. When we talk about the judgment seat of Christ, this is where the idea comes from. That we will stand before. So if we had a court case, we would come there and they would sit on this seat here. I mean, there would be a chair on top of it, but it's a little bit of an elevated platform, not too big, not even big as this for them to sit on, and they would issue their judgments. They would issue their decrees there. Um, these are two scriptures that they have there. One talks about the golden calves that he set up, and then these are by King Josiah, who when he heard the word of God, he tore down the high places where the priests burn incense. He broke down the high places of the gates. Talk about the high places. So when we look here, this is the temple. This is a high place. It's really just an elevated place. King James Version uses that term, high places. But it's a raised platform. But here is where the altar would be. And if you can see it here, they didn't reproduce the altar. This is a closer shot of where the altar would have been. And then this picture here shows basically an animal on the altar here. So that's the altar. The blood would drain out and they would make their sacrifices here. Again, this is the actual this is the actual size of what the altar was. King James talks about the horns of the altar. These are the horns of the altar. They just kind of, hang over the side of the altar, keeps the animal from kind of falling in that space there, in that space that on top, right? So you can't see this here. So this is a man here. That's his hand waving over the altars here. The animal is laying on the altar, tied up. This one here has a knife in his hand, getting ready to slay the animal. Well, stand up and go look at it. Get close. I mean, well, guess what? If you sit in the second to last row, you ain't gonna be able to see it all. I'm sorry, y'all watching on Facebook. They acting up today. They really are. They cutting up. That's the person. He's laying on his side. Right. That's the blood coming down. But that's his head right there. That's his head. And this man here. No, no, that's a sign. That's a sign that's out there. I didn't make that. That's at the that's at the that's at the place. That's me taking a picture of the he's got one hand up and he's got a one hand up raising it to whoever he's worshiping and he's got a knife in his hand going back. Is what a bucket. This? That's a bowl in his hand. No, ain't no buckets up there. Get right. If you want to see it, get up. Y'all they cutting up today, y'all. We'll do a special one just for you, Dee Dee. She gonna sit in the second last row. This is this is um this is an ancient gate. They say this is the oldest gate um in the world. It goes back to the time of Abraham. It's a Canaanite gate. It's not the oldest. It's the oldest arched gate in the world. They believed that Romans invented arched gates until they found no. So this thing is just protecting it because it's made out of mud and rocks. Okay. But this is what the gate would have looked like in its day. And there's an arch here. This is the arch. This arch here is that arch there. They thought at one time that Romans had invented archways, but this proved and predates Roman arches by over 1,000 years. But this is the arch. This would have been the entrance to this city even before Israel had taken over, before they had come into the promised land. When if Abraham came this way, he would have entered the city this way. Okay? No. It's all fenced off. And actually, the first time I went, this they had recently discovered this. This model wasn't even there. This model is new. This is Caesarea Philippi. Um, this is a cave that they used to worship in. Um, this right here, we'll do a close up of this in just a moment. Um, Matthew 16:13 through 16, Jesus comes into Caesarea Philippi and he asks the disciples, "Who do men say that I am?" And some say, "You are John the Baptist, others Elijah or Jeremiah or one of the prophets. But who do you say that I am?" Peter answered, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." That's Caesarea Philippi's claim to fame biblically. Really, the only thing that kind of happens there. Um, that's a close up of. We go back when we zoom in here. That's a close up here, and we'll look at it again in just a second. So this is what Caesarea Philippi would have looked like in Jesus' time. It is a huge cave. It's a huge cave. That the cave. This is the cave here behind the temple. So the first thing is this is the temple to Caesar. So they have a temple to Caesar. Then they have a shrine to Pan. This is what this is. So the temple to Caesar was a building. The shrine to Pan was actually carved into the side of the stone. That's why it's still there. It still exists. The temple to Caesar has fallen apart. It's crumbled. Parts of it are inside the cave because of earthquake activity. And so you had uh, shrine to Pan. There was a statue of Pan in here, and then there were these little alcoves here had other gods inside of them. Okay, this is Pan. Pan is always depicted as a goat. He's usually naked, and he's either playing his flute like he is here, or he's trying to get it on with a sheep or another goat. That's almost always how he's depicted. Either he's naked, they may put a loincloth in front of him or something, but oftentimes, even in this picture, his parts are out. In this statue here, he's often depicted that way. Then there was the temple to Zeus. Zeus is the king of the Greek gods. I didn't. Yeah. In Greek mythology, he's the main god. And then this was the dance floor of the goats, where they would dress up like goats and do all kind of sexual perverted stuff. So let's go back. It's at this place that Jesus says to his disciples, "Who do you say that I am?" We know what they feel about Caesar. Or who do men say that I am, rather? We know how they feel about Caesar. They done built him a big old temple here. We know how they feel about Pan. We know how they feel about Zeus. We know, but what do they say about me? We know that they got these alcoves for all their other little gods. What do they say about me? Some say you're John the Baptist. John the Baptist was dead, had been beheaded. Some say you Elijah or Jeremiah, one or the other. They did too, thousands of years. Good company. I mean, they could have named some bad people. Then Jesus asked the question, "Who do you say that I am?" Thou art the Christ, Son of the living God. He's standing in the midst of all of that. I mean, it's kind of like today, but it's so much more than today. You know, because we don't have this. It was raw. It was there. It was in your face. You know, we do our stuff in this building. The Jehovah's Witnesses, they do their stuff in their building. The Buddhists, they do their stuff in their building. The Hindus, they do their stuff where they do it. They do all we do, but here it is, it's out and everybody's doing it. We got a temple for Zeus. We got a temple for Caesar because Caesar's a god. We worshiping him. And then we got the goat, and then we got everybody else's little god. You pick whichever one you want. Do whatever you want, and you got to make a choice. And that's what we have today. I mean, and that was always the case. I didn't I'll do those another time. But in Athens at the Acropolis, where Paul gets up and Paul preaches, on Mars Hill. That's where the Acropolis is. And they have this huge, massive temple to Athena and Diana and all these others. And then they got an altar that says to the unknown God. Paul says, let me tell you about the unknown God. And he uses that opportunity to tell them about Jesus. The unknown God who some of y'all are ignorantly worshiping. Let me tell you how you can know him. But that was the climate there. Because these places end up they were major places for trade. Like Caesarea was a port. So the boats came in from everywhere. Everything that came into Judea came in through Caesarea. So then you got people from all over the world, and they bring in all their stuff there. And they stop in there, and they live in there. And so they build a temple to their person, and they build a temple to their, and then my God ain't up there. Let me carve a space up there for mine. All that confusion. Jesus picks that place of all places to ask how they feel about me. Jesus, you don't want to know. Well, he already knew. Now how do you feel about me? Says flesh and blood didn't reveal that to you, but my Father, which is in heaven, via Philippi. Bet Shein. Um, Bet Shein is as close as, I mean, I didn't click through the pictures. Uh, it's almost as close as you get to actually being in a full Roman city. Caesarea Philippi had a little bit of stuff, but Bet Shein has has almost everything. Um, Bet Shein was around in Jesus' time. It was a Roman city. It was part of the Decapolis. It was one of the 10 cities. That's what the word Decapolis means. So we talked about last week, Gadara, the Gadarenes, where the man who lives in the graveyard and is cutting himself and shrieking, and Jesus heals him. That's what Gadara is, one of the 10 cities. So that region has 10 cities, and Bet Shean was the capital of that city, capital of that region. It's the only capital on this side of the Jordan River, because most of everything that's happening is happening, you know, east of the Jordan, west of the Jordan rather, east of the Jordan. The capitalist is really the only thing that place has got it going on. As a capital city, um, Bet Shean in the Old Testament is where Saul and his sons got killed. It's called Beth Shan, Bethshan, referred to in the Old Testament. It's not actually referred to in the New Testament, other than it being one of the Decapolis cities. That's the amphitheater there. You can actually see, like, this is where the seats were. This is the actual stage of the amphitheater. It would have gone up and come all the way across there. In Now the amphitheater in Caesarea is in better shape, so we could actually sit in those and climb that one. This one we couldn't climb, but it's almost a complete and utter city. This is the main street of the city, lined with Roman columns. Those would have been temples there along the sides of the city. They actually had apartment buildings. Two-story apartment buildings were common in that area in that time. This is another bathhouse. Again, these pillars would have held up the floor tiles, and they would have pumped the hot water in there, and then the steam would come up through holes in the floor. Right, yeah, right. The stuff we build our houses out of. Uh, uh, the floor, yeah, the floors are gone. The floors are gone. But I'm gonna show you this next one here. That's the bathroom. This is the bathroom. You would put one cheek on this one and another cheek on that one, and everything fell down in this trench down here. Pardon me? They look further apart than they are. It's probably about, well, Claudia, as small as you are, yeah, as small as Claudia is, she'd have to sit in between. She can fit all the way in between. But they're not as far apart. It's probably about as wide as a toilet. as a toilet bowl is now. It's probably about that wide. They just look further apart than they are. I did have a picture. I had a picture of me. Well, obviously this one is missing, but you know, right? That one is missing, and it goes down. There's a trench there that, and it would be full of water, and they would flush it away. But there was no. You didn't have plumbing in your house, so you would go to the public bath, and I mean, that's just a bunch of toilets. Yeah, hmm? Those are there. Yeah, that's marble, or either marble or limestone. These are marble. The wall is like limestone. But you sit down and you go, and then you'd go. That's what they did. Everybody, and hey, thank God we were born when we were born, where where we were born. Yeah, they were cold. Yeah, they might. This didn't. They cutting up today, y'all. They cut. Claudia done fell down. And Lord have mercy. All right. This is um this is the entrance to Masada. That is. I mean, that is it. Masada is there's a museum down there. Masada was Herod's summer palace. It was on a plateau 1,000 feet in the air. That's Masada. Now, and it's huge. It really is huge. He- This is all rock. This is all mountain. So, and this is we had to take this card up here. I'll show it to you in the next one. But this is where Herod had his little palace down here, and the people would be up there. They lived up there. He had a army that would be stationed there, and then they actually farmed up here on top of it. You look at these stairs. So, I mean, that's the view. This me taking a picture down. We had to we had to ride up in there and this. And this is a model of what it would have looked like. This would have been Herod's palace. These were like the storehouses where they stored the food, stored the grain. Actually, this right here was the water cistern where they would catch the rainwater, and they would be able to absolutely. It is, and I didn't I if you could still see the tile floors, parts of the tile floor, the mosaics that they put in there. I mean, thousands of years later, it's still there. Now, what happened? What makes and there's nothing biblical about Masada. Um, this is an aerial view of Masada. We talked about it before that in 70 they destroyed Jerusalem and basically um, tried to wipe the Jews off the map again. And some people escaped to Masada, looking at the camera, because it was a fortress. It was a fortress. There were provisions up high, so you could see everything. Food was there. They went to Masada. The Romans followed them to Masada, or eventually found out that there were people holding up, hiding in Masada. Romans came in. This right here is the ramp that the Romans built to climb up there. 1,500 feet in the air. They marched in and they took dirt and took more dirt and they took more, because you couldn't, because the stairs is like, you know, two people wide. They couldn't, you could just drop rocks on them and kill them that way. Those Romans came in like a machine and just kept building this ramp. 1,500 feet high. And the people up there, there was 1,000 people up there, or 960 people up there. They could see them come in. And you think, oh, they just gonna give up, they gonna quit. And they watched them build that up. What they did, rather than let them be killed, let themselves be killed by the Romans, they killed each other and killed themselves. Set it on fire. It's not a the thing is the determination for them to go and build a ramp out of dirt 1,500 feet high. We're coming to kill you. We will kill you now or we will kill you later. We are going to kill you. We send another regiment in. Come in, but keep coming, keep coming, keep coming, keep coming. And you can look down even now and see where the Roman camps were. It's just squares in the ground where they had set up one regiment here, one regiment here, one regiment here, and they just came and they just piled that dirt up, packed it down, piled it up, packed it down, and then you up there, nothing is coming in. So eventually you're running out of food anyway. They couldn't get out. No. They had shovels, hammers, picks, years. They were trying, but here's the thing. First of all, you're surrounded. No new food coming in or out. They did farm up there, but you can only do so much. Remember, this was not something that they used year round. So it wasn't even really typically designed for 1,000 people to be up there. These people have retreated there. They're hiding there, and somebody finds out they're there. Somebody surrounds your house. You know, you only got so long before they got to come in. I mean, you might kill 2 or 3 of them, but after a while, that's it. You're running out of food. Let it be a bad winter, or let it be a bad growing season, and the crop that you did have is messed up. So, right, and people steadily bringing them supplies, and they're steadily bringing in more people. Eventually, they came to the point where they killed their wives, they killed their children, and they found the lots that they cast of who was going to be the last person. Somebody got to be the last one. Yes. They were meant to be found. So this is not a biblical site, but it is very important to the Jewish people. Very, very. This is the video um, it's going to show some Masada and it's going to show um, some Caesarea. So this is, I think Masada is first, and it'll show like a 3D um, of what it would have looked like at time. So that's Masada as it is now. I mean, it's a huge site, and you can walk all through it. It is very high. high up. Oh, there's definitely some hate. I mean, and for why? I mean, but there's just some hateful people. Absolutely. I mean that for no other reason other than they're different. So this would have been like this his palace would have been up here, and then he had a place down here where he did his little extra. Um, but it was open. There's another bit. His extracurricular activity. this is this is Caesarea now. That's the aqueduct that goes 13 miles. That's the amphitheater, or the theater rather. That's what it would have looked like in that time. It was when I was there. It was between 80. This was This was a pool he built that went out into the ocean. The first infinity pool. That's where they had their horse races. It's probably like this was the harbor that he built, and this was the temple to the Caesar here. I mean, it's amazing. That's the pool there. Um, so that's that. Any question? They didn't really have slaves like we know slaves. No, no, no. People they had people worked for it. That was their job. Yeah, I mean they got paid to do it. They were heavily taxed, and so they paid people to do it. When the Bible talks about uses the term slave, he's it's talking about any really it's talking about a servant. It's talking about anybody who was not an officer or a business owner. If you got paid to do work, especially in the New Testament, everybody doctors were considered slaves. And they were considered slaves. If you didn't own a business, if you got paid to do a job, worked for somebody, you were a servant. But the people who did this, even in these are skilled artists, mathematicians, in order to be able to cut these stones, precisely and put them together. And for like Martha said, our house is falling apart now, and this stuff is 2,000 years old and older and still standing. Part of it is the material they use, but still being able to put it together for it to survive storms, survive earthquakes, survive. Right, absolutely. To even get it there, to get marble and all that up Masada, brute strength and force. I always talk about patience and perseverance. We in Florida, we would get these love bugs, and the love bugs, they call them love bugs because you usually see two of them kind of stuck to each other, and they would they would cover any light colored house. So we had a light colored house, and they get in, and so I put tape over the door. Just the crack of the door, the bottom of the door, and every now and then you see one in the house. Ryan, they be like, "How did they get in?" Patience and perseverance. That's it. They wanted to get in. Patience and perseverance got them in. How did they get that stuff up, Masada? When Herod said, "Do it, or you dead," you gonna do it, and they work you till you. And if you die, they throw you off the. Somebody else is coming in. Them Roman soldiers. To move that type of dirt, to make a 1,500-foot ramp big enough for people, wide enough for people for them to carry their stuff up there, a road, and to keep at it. Boom, boom, boom. Those people, they wasn't built like we are. They carried everything. No cars. They walked everywhere, so they had much more strength than the average one of us, obviously, but still, no. It would take them a year to build that with today's construction equipment, and it'll fall down the next week. They be talking about, "Oh, we finished. Now we doing repairs on it." At in Poughkeepsie. Okay, is that yeah? That thing is. They need to take that whole thing down. That's how did you do it 1,000 years ago? Um, well, I'm glad uh, I was able to share, and you were able to see, and I like having these tools to be able to share and kind of bring them in. When we're preaching about these places, when we're teaching about these places, to kind of help get a fuller picture, get a better visual. I haven't looked online. See if anybody online had any questions before we sign off. All like we're good. Looks like we're good. All right, any prayer requests? All right, let's go. Father, we thank you for this day that you have made. We thank you for your goodness, your mercy, your grace, your kindness. toward us. Thank you for always looking beyond our faults and seeing our needs. Lord, um, thank you for the ability to be able to go and to come back and to see and to share, and for the technology to be able to show it, Father God. We don't take any of it for granted. We don't take any of it lightly. Father, thank you for increasing the faith through being able to see what was, what is, and the faith to see what is to come in the future. Father, bless us as we get ready to go from here, as we lay down tonight. Father God, watch over us, keep us, protect us. Wake us up in the morning, touch us with your finger of love. Give you the glory, honor, and praise. In Jesus' name. Amen.